All right, good morning, everybody. It is Thursday already, the 30th of January. And so really, this is our last recording for the, or live call, depending on whether you're listening to this recorded or live, for the year, or for the, I'm sorry, for January. I'm just waking up. First cup of coffee is just hitting me. And as we typically do on Thursdays, I've got Mike on the line, our CFO, our COO, and for those of you who are getting to know Mike, maybe don't know him personally, he also has his own fractional CFO business where, Mike, you have insight into a lot of other folks who are doing business in the real estate space, quite large businesses, mostly small brokerages and large teams across the United States. And you've really blown that up in the last year. So it's always really fun to listen to you and get your insights, even though you're my little brother. That's why we do it, because you look at the world.
I don't think it's very fun to listen to me.
Well, I do. So, and at least once a week. Maybe if it was every day, maybe a little too much, but you once a week, great dose. So let's kick off. You just did a class with
Christy Belt-Grossman.
Yeah, and which is it's a mouthful. You gotta say that a few times.
Yeah.
But Christy's awesome and has quite a following of her own, as sort of an administrative master in the real estate space. What was the class about? And you were going to share some takeaways from that class.
Yeah. So the class it was really Christy's class that she teaches, and I was like a bonus barnacle at the end, hanging on there. But at the same time, I think I had an hour, and so I presented
strong barnacle. Yeah.
So I presented a case study about basically the difference between what I call survivors and thrivers. And so I presented two teams that have the same gross commission income, but vastly different bottom lines, and the elements that the internal elements that result in those vastly different bottom lines. So it was a really good class, though. Christy is obviously steeped in this stuff. Her company is called Ops, like Operations Boss Coaching. That's what she does full time. She coaches administrative assistants, executive assistants, directors of operations, COOs, whatever you want to call them, depending on the size of the real estate team. Mm-hmm. That's who she coaches. And her entire
that's her full-time gig now.
Yeah. And she has other coaches who work for her. And she was the COO of the Belt team, which is a KW team. That is, at one point was one of the largest teams in Keller Williams. I don't think they're still like in that, top echelon, but they're still a robust team. But she left that, she replaced herself so she could do this full time. So, I was sitting in the class all day, until I had my hour. And I was taking notes, and I was nodding along, and some things were new and some things I'd heard before, and some things I just needed to be reminded of. But, her philosophy is that the administrative sort of line of a real estate business is completely indispensable, and that really good administrative help is worth its weight in gold. And actually, she puts a figure on it, 3 times worth its weight in gold is what every sort of administrative hire should be focusing on. Like they take their salary and then they figure out ways that they can triple their salary in forms of revenue. Awesome. And so that's like that she actually starts basically with that concept. She doesn't start from anything sort of wishy-washy. It's very concrete. And I think that's good because it gives everyone an anchor point. So
let me just jump in real quick.
Yeah.
What I've heard, and here's the common, the first time somebody was advising me on hiring administrative help, it was about buying back life, not about that person. paying for themselves 3 times over. So
Right.
what I'm hearing is this is not just a convenience factor. This is a leverage factor.
Yeah, 100%. And I think she is, she's pretty unapologetic in that she does not believe that you can build a big business by having a revolving door of underpaid sort of automatons who are just going to come in and serve a role in a very corporate environment, because that's not the dynamic of real estate teams. When you have a team that's firing on all cylinders and they're doing a lot of production, or even a solo agent who's doing a lot of production, it is a race to revenue, right? It is a constant race to be closing the next deal. And you cannot afford to have somebody who is not totally invested in running that race with you, right? Or she called it, riding shotgun in the car and navigating. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think we've seen it in our businesses. I'm starting to reach that point in my consulting business where I realize that, not that I want to buy back my time, but that I would like some good administrative talent, or like is not a good word. I need good administrative talent to bring me to the next level, right? That allows me to serve more clients. It allows me to help more people, stop wasting their money and actually have profitable businesses. So for me, it's actually like it's not just I'm feeling tired of doing these things. It's like, well, I'm getting pretty close to the capacity of how many folks I can serve. So when you put it in that context, you're like, okay, this is crucial. She actually showed a video of a guy named Seth Campbell, who's in
No, Seth. Yeah.
He's in real estate, and I'm not sure where he is with KW now, sort of like in upper management, you could say, with the company. But this is an early video of him, and he's very straightforward. He's a pretty blunt guy. And so he was talking about his first administrative hire, right? And and this is the spin that he put on it after the fact, but it's probably essentially what he was thinking at the time. Was there's 2 sides of real estate business. There's the sales side and there's the administrative side. And I'm giving you ownership of the administrative side of the business. And as soon as you decide that you don't want ownership of that entire side of the business, you should resign. You're fired, right? As soon as you give me back a piece of that, it means you don't want the job, and that's okay. We can part amicably because I have to go find somebody else. Mm-hmm. The other thing he said was, with that first hire, he was growing really rapidly. He said, I do not care who you hire to help you get the administrative side done, right? I will consult with you. I will help you through issues, right? But never give me back a piece of the job, and you need to get into a class on hiring because you're going to need help because I'm going to run really fast. So you can either decide to run with me and hire the help that you need, because I don't need the help, right? Like, you're the person that I hired for that. You're the one who's going to need the help. It's just it was such a blunt way of looking at it. Obviously it's not the way that Christy would have framed it, but she showed the video, I think, to provide the contrast, right? To provide the revenue focused agent, high flyer contrast to what she was saying, but they're 2 sides of the same coin.
Right. Yeah, it's a great reframe. And I really like that. I've used that same concept of someone handing you the job back. You hire somebody and they what the job is. And by the way, that job, if they're good, they take more and more ownership of things. And when somebody's at capacity, when they start handing things back to you or going, oh yeah, I forgot about that. I'm glad you mentioned it, sort of thing. Like, well, I gave this to you and you didn't own it.
Right.
So it's a fantastic indicator. and it happens, right? And this part of being in dialogue with your people, which you always have to ask yourself is it that I haven't communicated clearly enough what the expectations are for this new role? Or is it that this person doesn't want the role that I've given them? And you have to really ask that. And it's an important one. And that should reflect in the expectations. What I really, really love is this idea of the 3x sort of return on investment of that hire, right? And if that becomes the standard, you say, okay, well, if I'm going to hire this person, what would I need them to execute on in order to be worth 3 times their salary?
Right.
I think is a great way to think about it.
Yeah. And so one of those, and so a couple of examples of that specifically, like what can they do? And she gave several. They all came back to systems and scripts. So, and I think scripts can have sort of a negative connotation sometimes because they sound very salesy, but I do think that, the example she gave made a lot of sense. So the systems were for generating referrals during the transaction, generating lots and lots of reviews, and then ensuring that essentially the database, the beating heart of the company, where every client interaction is stored and kept and all of the contact information was updated really regularly on a particular, system. They had a particular model for doing that.
Just to be clear, you just said something that I think is really important. You kind of blew through it, but it's important. The database in her model is the beating heart of the business.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think there's no way around it. You live and die on the strength of your relationships, and database is a reflection of that. And I think that there are there's so much richness in there that we forget about. So the assistants, though, or the administrative folks, can have such an impact on those referrals, right? And the way people feel after the transaction, right? And the last sort of memory that they have of the team. And so they built in these aren't just like emailed scripts. These are like phone scripts where at a particular point in the transaction, the administrative folks would call and say, we just got through this. They would celebrate something, and then they would have a line or two where they say, anybody who's looking for the same level of service, something like that, right? And it sounds so like, for those of us who've been in real estate for a while, this is just like, it's almost old hat. But then you look at the results, and you cannot argue with the results, right? There's no way around it. As much as you want to be like, well, that stuff doesn't work, that's fake, like you can't argue with how successful they were. And then when folks talk about, there's another coach that I did a class with late last year, the size of her database was shockingly small for the amount of transactions that they did. And they had almost zero budget for bringing new blood, quote unquote, into that database. But they were incredibly, like, almost strangely systematic, about the way that they approach folks, about the touches that they wanted to get in, about the events that they did, about the meetings that they held. And they were purposeful also about, and they didn't say this because they had no concept of it, but finding influential people, right? Going down the influencer pyramid.
Right. So Mike, you said something here that I want to just dig into just really quick here, because I think it's important to understand scripts in this context. What you're not saying is have somebody who is not totally immersed in your business ask these questions, right? This can't be outsourced to someone who works part-time for you to say, hey, I'm calling you to celebrate, the fact that we got past financing. Oh, by the way, or like, Do you know anybody who's looking to buy, sell, invest in real estate? It cannot sound like that. And it has to be somebody who they have some degree of intimacy with
Right.
through the transaction. And I think it's really important. And I think oftentimes we're nervous. If I'm a solo agent listening to this call, which many of you are, I'm thinking, okay, this feels weird. I don't like that. It sounds salesy, and your brain starts to turn off. Here's what I want to propose to you is that what Mike's talking about from Chrissy's class is the systematic, the system that leads up to you being able to ask that question, actually having the obligation to ask that question, right? So you have a system of service, and that service sort of hits a peak. And that when you peak in that service sort of relationship, and there's multiple peaks in a conversation, in a transaction, there's multiple reasons to celebrate. So at those peaks are times where it is the most natural thing in the world for you to be able to say, I'm so thrilled that you're enjoying this. Listen, I would love to work with anybody who's like you, because the reason this is working is because you're a fantastic client. So I really appreciate that. If you think of anybody like you who we could serve, I'd be honored. However that comes out, right?
Yeah, the clone script.
Yeah, the clone dialogue that I if I could clone you, I would. I can't, but if you have friends like you, which is the closest thing, I would love the opportunity to work with them. Thank you so much. Listen, next week, and then you just move on. Next week, I'm going to serve you this way. Tomorrow, I'm going to give you a call about this. Do you have time? Just make it a fluid part of your conversation. And when it is that way, it is completely natural, right? It's not awkward. And you're not asking them to refer somebody right there, right? Or you're just planting the seed. And you plant that seed at those peaks along the transaction. And initially, that's your job. And then when you bring somebody into your business, it becomes their job throughout the transaction. And that has to be really explicit. They have to hear you talk about it. They have to hear you say it before they're able to do it. And so you have an obligation to systematize your service so that you have the ability and, dare I say, the obligation to make these asks as well. By the way, you're doing them a great service by serving their friends and family, by serving their coworkers. So, Mike, I love that. So what's the next takeaway?
Yeah. So the other thing, just to go back to the point of like specific ways that you can bring in 3x your salary. So in addition to asking for referrals, there's also a system to ask for reviews. So like Cheryl on the Kilner group is a great example of somebody who does a good job of asking for reviews.
She's on it. Yeah.
I think the Kilner group just got to 200 reviews on Zillow, right? And that's when someone, we don't spend any money on, when I say we, the Kilner group doesn't spend money on internet advertising. We haven't for years. And it's just a validation point for the referrals. Someone says, hey, you should really, hey, John Kirk is really great. Danny Reardon, he's a good guy. And then they look up the team, and one of the things that they see is, oh, wow, these people actually have done a lot of business. And people like them. And I think that we, I was looking up a new client of mine, and I was searching him, and I know he does a lot of business. And I actually know his reputation in his office, right, is really good. People respect him a lot. And when an agent is respected in their office highly, usually means that their clients respect them, right? That means that they're a good practitioner that people can trust, go to for advice. And he had 3 reviews on Google. So it's just like
on Google or Zillow?
On Google. I didn't dive into but that's like the top main result when you look him up. And that's like, this is a mismatch, right? So he doesn't have a system in place to ask for those reviews. If he had it, he would have 50 of them, because he's good at what he does.
Right.
And I don't need to, and I know him and I know his reputation. And so that just doesn't match up. So
there might be some folks who say, well, we know reviews can be gamed. And so why even pay attention to them? What is the defense against that? Because I'm a believer that It is a validation tool. You don't always hear about it, but people are checking it. And I mean, anytime I buy something on Amazon, I'm looking at reviews before I buy it.
Oh yeah. Well,
So
what does it cost you um, to implement a system or to have your administrative team implement a system to get those reviews, right?
mhm,
It's free essentially, right?
a
Like
little
you
bit of
just have
time.
to put the system in place, right? And you have to, and I think folks feel weird about it sometimes. They don't want to ask for it. Like, okay, give it to somebody else. Hire the person who's going to implement it for you. I think the defense is why you say why, you say why not. It's pretty simple one.
Yeah, I mean,
The
it's
other
not entirely free. There's a little bit of time, but when you put a system in place, it becomes really cheap in
right,
terms of time as well.
right. And so the other thing that you said, and I think this is how everyone on a team should think, is how can you activate your personal sphere as an executive assistant, right? Or as the director of operations. Like how can you activate the sphere for revenue for the team? And so it doesn't, you're not talking about like someone who's licensed and who wants to get a internal referral fee. You're just talking about somebody who they want the business to succeed, because when the business succeeds, they succeed.
Right.
Right. So it's not like about, so I never did this systematically or particularly well, but like I'm in the age demographic where a lot of folks are buying their first home. And it's been really great for me to be able to refer folks that, I'm not getting a referral fee on it, but folks that I know to really good agents on the team, right? Like it's, and I wish now I had been more systematic about it, and I didn't think about it that way. So these things happen by chance. But if you're doing it, in a natural way, but also in a way that like you would treat any agent's sphere of influence, when they come onto your team, you treated them, like the gold mine that they are.
So how
You
do you
would
do that?
generate great results.
How does one, as an administrative person, and some of you are wearing both the administrative hat and the sales hat for your team. So let's talk about that. What is it any different than what somebody on the sort of sales side is doing?
I think it's different because you're not necessarily the professional that they're going to, right? So you have to be sort of the operations person, administrative person has to be deeply tied into, the culture and the brand of
Right.
the team. And they have to be associated with that. And I think they have to be, proud of that fact, like to be associated with that team. Because then the referrals become very natural, right? The ask becomes very natural. Like these are the things that sorry, I just lost my train of thought. These are the things that our team does. These are the things that our team does really, really well. Be part of that, right? So you want that the mentality to be like, well, why wouldn't you work with us, right? Like I want you to have the best service, and I know that it's here, and I also have a role to play in it, and so I can help to make sure that it's really, really top notch.
So
So
Mike,
I think
yeah,
you're not at the same, like when you think about the sort of the going back to the influencer pyramid, you're not at the same point, right?
right,
Because you're not in the end the fiduciary. But if people associate you with that strong brand, right, and they associate you with excellence, then the role that you play becomes a little bit less important, right? And they're
right,
willing to just do business with the people that you're in business with.
right. Well, and by the way, from the view of the client, they're not distinguishing fiduciary versus administrative, right? They're not thinking those legal terms. And so what they care about is service, period. Whether it's preparatory to fiduciary sort of things, which is oftentimes what administrative folks are doing, or the actual giving advice in a fiduciary way. So I don't think there's a distinction there. And so when people feel well served, you open up the opportunities here. But what you're also talking about here is not just people in transactions who are in, but also their own sphere of influence. And Mike, we have a few more minutes here, just very few. If I'm listening to this, I'm an individual agent. I've had a lot of conversations with some folks on the call here who are thinking about making that hire of an outsourced transaction coordinator. What would you say to that, understanding this through the lens of what Christy's talking about, of really saying, look, it's all or nothing sort of thing. Is there room for that role?
Yeah, no, I definitely think there's room in terms of, well, so the first reason is because it's a really tight job market. And when you hire a really good administrative person, if they're really, really good, you're probably going to pay them more than you thought you were going to pay them. This is the first thing. So I know that a lot of agents really aren't at that level where they need or really can afford that great person. It's just the dynamics of the market. But that does open the door for, not a real, human employee relationship, but a vendor type of relationship. So we use vendors in every aspect of our business, right? Software vendors, right? And marketing vendors, and the printer in the office, we lease it from somebody who fixes it. Like, we use vendors in everything.
But you're not expecting a 3x return from your vendors.
No. But I do think that the transaction coordination, companies, they do serve a real discrete role. They do buy you back time and add sort of a pre-made system to your business that you can plug into, and you do not have to train them. That is their value. Their value is that they are variable cost, right? That they will not usually wow the socks off your clients, right? But they will provide a sort of a human touch to a delicate system and keep you organized and on track. And they don't cost very much. So I do think that there
is a place. Okay. So awesome. Mike, thanks, man. This has been awesome. I'd love to continue some of the takeaways here maybe next week, but we're up against time right now. So for those of you wondering, this is not coffee, by the way. This is water. My second one of the day. Bubba mug. They're awesome. With a straw. Goes down faster. And that is my daughter in the background practicing piano with a toddler trying to also practice piano.
Yeah, actually, I can't hear anything.
You can't? Okay. I can hear it with these things on. So if any of you are wondering, I'm not at a music concert. It's just a 10-year-old or 11-year-old.
All right. I gotta run because I hear that.
All right, man. Have fun.
Waking up again.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
Right, yeah.
Thanks, Mike. Talk to you soon. See everybody.